Pay attention. This is important. Is there a part of the team that isn't as strong as it should be?
I got 3 parts.
Okay.
And this is a very, very good team, but obviously the offensive line is not as good as it should be. They have one really good offensive lineman and a bunch of backups who could become starters, starting caliber players. And
Why don't we
McGlinchey
go
is hurt.
through the line and sort of talk about each guy?
Trent Williams is the best left tackle. Left guard Aaron Banks has never started a game in the NFL. I thought he looked not good in training camp in the preseason, and I think I'm not certain that he's going to make it through the season as a starter. Then the center's Jake Brendel, who's a 30-year-old who's started. He's barely played in his career, so he's an unknown. The right guard is Spencer Burford, who's a rookie, and the right tackle is Mike McGlinchey.
What do you think about Spencer Burford?
I like him, but he's a 21-year-old rookie, and even though he's talented, you'd have to expect him to be up and down this year. In the last preseason game, he had 2 holding penalties.
Okay,
so good, but probably up and down. And then right tackle Mike McGlinchey coming back off a really serious injury, a quad tendon tear, I think, and so far he's been in and out. So if it's not him, it's Cole McKivitz, who's okay.
Okay,
yeah. And so the question is like, is the pass protection going to be such an issue that Trey Lance gets hurt? Is the run blocking going to be an issue? This should be they're trying to be a dominant run team. Can they be a dominant run team with these offensive linemen? Laken Tomlinson was a big part of their running game in the past few years. So that's a big one, the offensive line.
So it's big. To me, it defines everything about an offense.
Yeah.
Right?
It absolutely does. And if the Niners are getting quarterbacks hurt, then they're not going to go very far. So there's that. There's also safety. They let Jaquiski Tartt go. He's got old. I mean, he's available. They can get him, but they're very dependent on Jimmy Ward, who's very good, but he really hurt his hamstring. I think it's like a 3-month injury. It might be like a tear. So he's not going to be there for the first 4 games or more. And now they don't really have a very strong safety position without him. They got a first-year starter in Talanoa Hufanga and a first-year starter in George Odom, who's been a vet, but he was an all-pro special teamer. So that's not exactly – they have very good corners, but their safety position is a big question mark now. Both their starters from last year are gone for now.
Okay, and you said there was a third area of concern?
Yeah, this is smaller, but tight end. George Kittle's excellent, but they never bring in anyone new. There's no one really behind him. So he has to play every snap of every game, which hasn't really been good for him the last couple of years. He gets worn down. He misses time. And once you go from having like the best tight end in the league to just a backup who is not a young up and coming guy who's going to be a starter one day. So again, they're in a position of having to use George Kittle too much, which is too bad. They brought in a bunch of tight ends this offseason, Tanner Hudson, Tyler Kroft. None of them made the team. They're in the same position they were in last year at this position. And they always say, well, we want to get better at tight end. You don't. You never do. You never actually make an attempt to add someone here, a serious one.
Iggy, let's name the positions on the team that they're strong at.
They're extremely strong at defensive line, linebacker, and cornerback. Those 3. Which means that their defense is going to do well. It's going to match up well against just about any offense in the league.
What about on offense? Do they any strong units there?
I like the running backs. They have 5 good running backs or 4. They have an excellent fullback in there as well. And their wide receivers they got Debo, Ayuk. They got very interesting wide receivers as well. No depth at offensive line and tight end. They have depth at quarterback, but they don't have – we don't know if they have one who's good enough.
Iggy, will they use consistently Debo as a running back?
You think they will? I think they're going to use him like it's going to be even more sophisticated. Last year was something they sort of did as the year went on. This year it's something they installed in the offseason. So every time last year he was in the backfield, it was a run. Now there's throws to Debo out of the backfield.
Love it.
Right? So it's evolving. I think it's going to be even more complex.
Okay, and here's this discussion leads to an overview question. How good is this team, and is it a Super Bowl contender?
That's a tough one because we were saying, if you don't have a quarterback who's good enough, you're not really a Super Bowl contender. But, I mean, there's a lot of examples of teams that have won a Super Bowl with mediocre quarterbacks because they had a great defense. And this defense, if Jimmy Ward comes back soon, could be great. I think it's going to match up. It's going to outmatch pretty much every offense it faces this year, which is going to give the Niners a really good chance to win most games. And if their offensive line isn't horrendous, they should be able to run the ball. And a good run game and a good defense takes you pretty far, as we've seen. So I do think they could go to the NFC Championship game. If one of those two quarterbacks gets hot in the playoffs, they could win the Super Bowl. Yes, I do think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say they have the potential to go all the way.
Yeah.
If they can work out the offensive line and if there's a quarterback who can really do the job. Yeah. And I mean more than simply manage the game.
Yeah.
If those two things work out, I would say they could absolutely go to the Super Bowl. But in a way, it's an unfair question now because there are question marks that need to be answered. Offensive line, quarterback. And until you really know more about those two issues, those two things, it's very hard to predict.
Yeah. Like the Bengals had the worst offensive line in the league last year. They went to the Super Bowl. They didn't win it, but they led the league in sacks. It's just the question is like, are you going to get your quarterback hurt on one of those sacks? The year before, Joe Burrow blew out his knee. Last year, he didn't get hurt. They were lucky with that. Are the Niners going to get these quarterbacks hurt? Is the offensive line going to be that bad? And then is it going to be so bad where they can't even run the ball like they want to? If that's the issue, they're not going to be Super Bowl contenders. So if the offensive line is decent, they could be. If the offensive line is decent, then it just depends on Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo getting hot down the stretch. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo has it in him. I think we've seen him in the playoffs. Maybe he could, but if Trey's rough at first, but he improves and is actually really good by the end of the year, then hell yeah.
You had mentioned Joe Burrow. I would say Joe Burrow is one hell of a quarterback. Would you agree?
Yes.
Trey has to be one hell of a quarterback.
Yes. Yes, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Because in the playoffs, you're going against teams that have one hell of a quarterback. And the Niners, to their credit, I mean, they beat Aaron Rodgers last year. They beat Dak Prescott. Both of those guys are really freaking good. But you can't win a Super Bowl just running the ball every week. Like the Niners beat Green Bay because they blocked a punt, returned it for a touchdown, and on a critical drive when they had a game-sealing field goal at the end. There was a 3rd and 7 on that drive. They converted it by handing off to Debo. He got 9 yards. You can't trick people every week with the 3rd down run. It only works once.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they got as far as they could go with, their run game and their tricks. You need a quarterback to take you the rest of the way. Don't you? I think you do.
I think so.
I think you freaking do. So that's the thing with this team. It's like they've put together this team that's been ready to go for years, but they just can't find the quarterback who matches their timeline.
That's right.
Trey may or may not match their timeline. We'll see.
And Jimmy, they thought he was out of time. Now they're giving him a little more time.
And they could have had Tom Brady the whole time, but they didn't want him.
We got one more topic, which is sort of a footnote topic.
Yes.
But it's interesting to me. The Niners sent out their cuts today. Some people were released and some people were waived.
Yeah.
And I realized you could call them cut, but there's a difference between released and waived.
Yes.
Iggy, could you explain it to us?
Well, waived means you go to waivers, which is like another draft. You're not free for any team to sign you. You can't just start negotiating with teams. You're now in a draft, and there's an order of that teams that can claim you off of waivers based on, I think, probably the record from last year. The worst teams get the first crack at it. I think that's how it goes. It's usually a weekly thing based on the records that week. So if you were waived, you have no idea where you could end up. You might get claimed by a team and go there against your will or whatever. Or if you clear waivers, you can then sign with whatever practice squad. Then you can do whatever you want. You can sign in a practice squad or something like that. People that are released skip that process and they can go to another team or practice squad.
Or nowhere.
They can go to the couch.
So, okay.
Yeah. And it's good to know. It's good to know. Let's answer some other people's questions before we leave. Tinker says it's August 30th, and Jimmy Garoppolo is still in the 49ers roster. I'm so glad it's football season.
Iggy, I love that. And, I think you ought to do one more video along those lines
Yeah.
and you ought to be, it's whatever date, and Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the 49ers, and I expect him to be there a long time. That's the end of this. You ought to end
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. I probably need to end it at some point because I
I
think the
think you
joke's
do.
over. But it got us through a very long off season, and it was
Yeah.
all my dad's idea. So thank you. Niner Gang Wolfcast is a new member. Thank you, Michael Hamilton. I dig the QC label you gave yourself, but dude, you not believe that players can get better by playing? Your convo is always, he's not good now, he's trash. No, they can get better from playing. You're right. But I don't know about Nate Sudfeld. I don't know. J.R. Beckhold says, are you getting 2019 vibes at all going into week 1? No, I think this is a way different team. That team started off 8-0. I don't know if this team's going to start off 8-0. I don't know. What do you and your dad recommend for good eats and drinks going to the week 2 game? And I've never been to that part of California before.
Well, that part is Santa Clara. I
Yeah.
know nothing about. I mean, they
Yeah.
pretend it's San Francisco. It's an hour or more down there. I mean, if you go to San Francisco or Oakland, you can't miss having good
Can't
restaurants.
miss. Yeah. Just go to San Francisco, go anywhere. Go to Oakland, go anywhere. Well, look up the nice places on Yelp, but that's what I would say. Just leave the South Bay, probably. Sorry. For people that live there. Grant just gushing with compliments today, says Zachary. Well, why not? It's a good team. Team's going to win a lot of games. Explain to me, would we be fined if we cut Jimmy Garoppolo today? Fined? Would they be fined if they cut Jimmy Garoppolo today? No.
I don't know, but they're not going to cut.
They want him.
Why do we need the hypothetical?
Yeah. Mid-Atlantic Teach 89 says lowered cost of the 3rd round comp for him next year. Yes, they're going to get a pick for him next year when he leaves. So there's also that. What was your sentiment when Young took control while Montana was benched for 2 years? This is a similar situation minus Montana. What was your sentiment when Young took control while Montana was benched for 2 years, Dad?
I knew that Steve was a hell of a quarterback.
Right.
I knew. I was more certain about Steve than I am about Trey.
I don't think it's helpful for the Niners to compare this situation to that one because those are 2 great quarterbacks, and the Niners right now have no great quarterbacks.
That's right.
They don't need to make that comparison. There's one more before we go. Steven says top waiver targets for 49ers. Oh boy, that's above my pay grade. I think Larry Krueger would probably have some answers for you though. But I don't even know. I've been covering the Niners. I don't know who's gotten cut. Sorry.